Here we have the equipment that we're going to use. Using a stick, the handle from a spatula, there's usually a silicone spatula here, just using that. A set of scales, ideally if they can be zeroed, that's great. Using a glass jar with a lid. This was, I think it was 1 kilo of coconut oil was in there. Rye flour, this is organic stone ground flour, and this is water. Now this water has been boiled and left in this jug for 24 hours, so that's let chlorine and other things evaporate off. Don't need that knife. So what we're going to do is pop that on there. Let me just turn it up a bit. Going to zero the scales, open up our flour, which I should have done before, but there we go. So we want 50 grams of the flour. Okay, just about 50 grams there. And then we're going to add 50 grams, I'm going to zero that. $50 grams of water. If you're out by a couple of grams either way, it's not really going to matter significantly for the average baker. Okay, so that's 50 grams of rye flour, 50 grams of the water. It was boiled yesterday. Just stirring it up. You want everything to be incorporated. I'm just going to use my finger. Again, the fingers are clean, the hands have been washed before we started this. Okay, so now I'm just pushing down the sides. Everything has come together in there. Just pushing down the sides, scraping off the sides. That can all go back in there. And then what I'm going to do is just leave that like that for the next 6 hours. And then what I will do after 6 hours is I'll put the lid on loosely. I won't tighten it at all, I'll just leave it on. And then 24 hours from today, we're going to feed this starter again. So I'll be back to you with day 2. Day 2, and the sourdough starter in here has been resting for 24 hours. As you can see, the lid was quite loose. Some condensation on the jar. Not sure if you can see in there, but it's quite firm starter, and it smells like damp, wet rye flour at the moment. Relatively sort of sweet. There are maybe a few bubbles in there, but nothing major at the moment. So what we're going to do is zero the scales. We're adding another 50 grams of the water. That's just over 50, but that's 552. Again, this water was boiled and left to stand in here overnight. And we're going to, if I bring this here, we're going to add 50 grams. I'll just zero that again. But what I'm going to do is just stir that into the mix, to the starter. Make sure that the water is incorporated well into that mix. And now zero that, adding 50 grams of the organic rye flour again. As I said yesterday, if you're using white flour, that's absolutely fine. We cook a lot with whole wheat flours, so I'm doing a rye. I also find it more stable for me. So we're going to give that a really good mix up. Again, clean fingers, scraping that down. And I'm just edging down scraping down the sides. You can see that. Lid on again, loosely. Another 24 hours in a warm area. Day 3 now with the sourdough starter, and you can see here bubbles have already started forming, which is pretty early. I think normally it takes me about 4 days before that happens, but that's three days. So we're going to feed this again. I'll look in there. Not sure if you can see, the light's terrible. You see that there's a few bubbles in there, and it's smelling decidedly different now. The sweetness has gone and it's much sourer. And in fact, you can see how light that now is. So we're going to give it a mix, knock everything out, and exactly the same again, zero it. This time I'm putting 75 grams of water. Give them a really good stir. Make sure that water is very well combined in there. I'm scraping down the sides just to get everything, make sure everything is combined into this mix. A bit there. Right, now I've forgotten the spoon. Adding 75, it's on 75 there, 75 grams of the flour. I know that this is this year's flour, so maybe that's why it's reacted, or 2008 harvest's flour, so maybe that's why it's reacted quicker than it might normally do. Okay, stirring this through again. So the first days were 50 and 50, 50 flour and 50 water. And today we've got 75 flour and 75 water. This is what bakers would call a 50-50 mix, because it's 50% flour and 50% water. Right, so that's well combined. What I'm going to do is grab a pen. Let's just make sure all of that is down from the side. That's it. Right, so I'm grabbing a pen and I'm actually going to mark where the level is. So I'm going to put a mark there, and then we'll see tomorrow how much that rises, or hopefully we'll see tomorrow how much that rises. So this is going back into a warm place for another 24 hours. Day 4, and as I hope you can see, there's a distinct reaction. This is where the level was yesterday. This is where the level really got to today, and it's sunk back a little, but you can see here there's plenty of activity going on there. And if I open it up and give it a smell, there's a distinctly nice sour smell. So if I just take, hopefully you can see there's quite a lot of air there. If I pull that up, you can see it's soft and moving. Now what I'm going to do, because I don't need all of that from now on, just wiping my hand, what I'm going to do is I've got another jar here and I only want 50 grams in here. So I'm going to zero that. I'm going to give this a really good mix. Scrub down the side. Remember, I haven't fed this yet today. Scrub it down the side, give it a good mix, and then I'm going to come around here. I want 50 grams of the starter in the new jar. Actually, I've got 62 grams in there. I'm not going to worry about that at the moment, but what I am going to do is add 50 grams of water. Just over 50, so that's 53. I'm going to add the same amount of flour. It's 53. Then give that a really good mix. Make sure that all the flour is incorporated and all the water is incorporated. and then I'm going to leave that for another 24 hours now. So this is going to be left. You pop the lid on, put that to one side. And what I'm going to do with the remainder of this starter, that's about 164 grams. Now this is 50% flour and 50% water because we're on the 50-50 mix. So I'm actually going to use this tomorrow in a yeasted bread. So I'm going to use the surplus starter here in a bread, and I'm going to add traditional yeast, and we'll do that tomorrow, because there's no, very often you hear about discard, where people discard their starter, very often put it down the sink or put it in the compost. When I have a discard, I like to use it. So now that we've built this up to what it was, which must have been about 225 grams, we're going to use the rest of this now tomorrow in a yeasted bread, and this one we will start the process of actually making a loaf tomorrow with this as well. So that effectively is a sourdough starter. I hope that's been helpful, and we'll be back tomorrow. Well, in another video, I will actually be doing both the making of the sourdough and what we do from this step here to make a sourdough loaf, and I'll also be using this one here to make a yeasted sourdough as well. Thanks very much. Bye.